Okay, greetings everybody and welcome back. Thank you so much. How do you like our music here at NightDragon? Okay, we went with like that, little tech beat kind of thing. Last time I did like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, so we're trying to change up for 2023. Anyways, thank you everybody. All our panelists have been just amazing. We're almost finished with our 360-degree view in our second annual cybersecurity state of, but we saved the best for last. And we're very excited to have Kemba Walden on as well. Thank you, Kemba, for joining, my friend. Good to see you. How are you doing?
Happy New Year, Dave. I'm doing great. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Sure that
I can hear you very well. Thank you for joining. Happy New Year to you as well. Good to see you again. And I appreciate it. Now, okay, how do you go by Kemba Eneas Walden or just Kemba Walden?
Kemba.
Okay, we'll just go by Kemba. There you go. I just thought I'd check, okay? Because maybe we can come up with like a kind of 3-letter nickname for you I was thinking of. So that's what we do in cyber, right?
Absolutely true. But just for the record, my name is pronounced Kemba Eneas Walden, but I go by Kemba.
There you go. Thank you, Kemba, for correcting me. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Thank you. Just so you have a little recap, we've had a panel session from system integrators like Kyndryl and Ernst & Young, EY. We heard from the CISO community, Google, Airbnb, Cigna on the healthcare side. We heard from Wall Street, which is always interesting, sell-side analysts like Citigroup and others talking about the markets. Then we talked to the early stage investors as well, like Allegis Cyber, Data Tribe, Team 8, ForgePoint, NightDragon's kind of views. Then we got a chance to also hear from some of the biggest tech companies like Microsoft and Palo Alto Networks. Everybody talked about the public partnerships with the government, public-private, and the year of 2022 and all the advancements. And I just want to take 1 second before you introduce yourself to say thank you. This administration, and I don't just say this because I've served 4 different administrations, has done an amazing job. Shields up, working together with the community, the team of professionals, the people, the process, the work, the reach out. Thank you. You heard it from every single panelist. So I wanted to echo that. Kemba, talk a little bit about your role and kind of ended up there and, big fan of what the White House is doing. So talk a little about what you're up to. I know you just took a big role in May.
That's right. So I am effectively the Principal Deputy National Cyber Director, the inaugural one here in the White House. Just a little bit of background about the office, and then I'll explain how I fit into it. So we were, as you know, authorized in January of last year. Chris Inglis was nominated in April, was confirmed by the Senate later on in June or July, walked into the White House. However, we were appropriated in November of 2021. So we've been running at full speed since we were appropriated in November. So it's been a little over a year. We're at somewhere between initial operating capacity and full operating capacity. At this point, we have 4 strategic principles that we've published somewhere out on the internet, making sure that we ensure federal cohesion, enabling actual public-private collaboration, which you mentioned was part of the conversation earlier today, ensuring that we have current and future resilience, and then we have a performance metrics mandate. All of that is to be done in an international context because, as you know, our security here in the United States is very much dependent upon security across borders and vice versa. And so as the inaugural principal deputy, my job is essentially to co-lead this organization hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder with Chris Inglis, but also function as the primary chief operating officer. So to make sure that we realize our strategic vision, to make sure that we are moving forward. It's sort of like being the coxswain in a rowing team for any of those that are, right? Just making sure that we are all rowing in the same direction towards the Biden-Harris administration's priorities, towards the priorities of the cybersecurity community. So that is my job in a nutshell. I'm happy to go through more detail with you as we talk, Dave.
I like the analogy of kind of coxswain and chief operating officer. Knowing you, you definitely are that, especially on my visit to the White House. You had everybody chop, getting going, organizing us. Thank you for your service, and great to see the role. It's amazing to watch the National Cyber Director, and Chris, I'm a big fan of, and all the initiatives that are going on. I want to spend a couple of minutes. Can you summarize, if you would, as best you can, like, what do you see? Like, we're talking about 2022 in review a little bit. I mean, the government's reaction in 2022 from a private point of view was amazing to watch, right? I mean, starting with Shields Up, yeah, Russia, Ukraine was happening, but way beyond that as well, into regulatory areas, increased spending, executive orders, JCDC, the work CISA's been doing. Like, it's just really refreshing to watch all that. From your perspective in 2022, what did you see that really drove all that? And like, from your government perspective, like, was it the threat environment? Was it national security? I'm assuming a lot of that. Just talk a little bit about 2022 in review for a minute, from your perspective.
Sure. I think let me go through 3 key observations, which will inform my sort of checklist of what we've accomplished in 2022. The first is that we've been in this business for a long time, those of us that have been around for a while. It took us this year, I think, to realize in actual practical terms that the government is really the supporting entity, right? The private sector is the supported entity. So that's one pivotal change that we've seen this year that informed our work over the course of the year. The second is, that we've seen the national security threat evolve. We've seen the aggression in Ukraine, and we've really seen, this is point number 2, that it really does take all of us to beat one of us. So OMCD and the rest of the federal government is a supporting command in this space. It takes all of us to beat one of us. And then the third observation I have is that cyber is really not just a national security mandate, but it also delivers economic prosperity and tech innovation. And we see that through the Biden-Harris administration's priorities in cybersecurity and tech innovation. And we see that with Congress's priorities in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the CHIPS and Science Act. And so from those 3 perspectives, let me just give you some 4 examples, if that's okay with you, Dave.
Please.
So understanding that it takes all of us to beat one of us. I don't have I'm sure we're going to have a lot of study about why the Russian aggression hasn't taken hold in Ukraine. I like to think, just back of the envelope calculations, that we had a lot to do with it, that our collaboration had a lot to do with it. Early in the aggression, we saw coming some potential retaliatory actions from Russia in the cyber realm. It was at that moment that the entire administration, including OMCD, decided to share classified information with those that could take action. And I'd like to think that was part of the secret sauce for why Ukraine is still standing in spite of this aggression. We've taken that lesson, which is, in my mind, a pivotal change, a pivotal moment of how we view information sharing and collaboration. We've taken that lesson to have some more executive forums. So, for example, we had one in the health sector where we brought in about 90 or so percent of the health sector, 90% of the health sector, and gave them classified briefings to help them understand threat. And then we had open conversations that we reported out about what to do, about what our risks are, what the consequences are of threat actors exploiting vulnerabilities, and what actions to take next. We did this. We upped the game a little bit in our executive forum for electric vehicles, right? We have an influx of cash going to electric vehicle industry through the Inflation Reduction Act. We took it upon ourselves within OMCD and in the White House and with our Office of Climate Change to bring in those executives C-suite to give them not only a threat briefing, but a vulnerability briefing, really giving them an actionable understanding of their risk profile. Then we had an open conversation with the Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, with DARPA, with our climate change office, and with others here at the White House about what our response is going to be, how we're going to make the electric vehicle industry more resilient. This has been informative in the building out of our national cybersecurity strategy, for example. We've done a bit on budgeting and management guidance. So we, as you know, have our Deputy National Cyber Director for Federal Cybersecurity is dual-headed as the federal CISO. And so in the vein of federal cohesion and in intimate collaboration, we produced OMB Spring Guidance. We produced guidance on zero trust architecture and implementation. We've aligned budgets to make sure that those resources for federal CISOs are available in order to be able to meet those obligations. We've tried to get our own house in order through implementation of Executive Order 14028. Those are just some examples of the work we've been doing over the course of the year to really drive that resilience, the federal cohesion, the collaboration, the performance metrics. It's been a whirlwind year, to say the least.
By the way, it's been impressive to watch. And I said this, I've served 4 administrations now, 20 plus years in the cyber market, national security market, and to watch the cross-agency coordination. You heard it from panelists after panelists, and the biggest Microsofts and Google saying it, how beneficial it was, but then also the cross-cabinet coordination as well. So the 4 verticals that you talked about, that got threat briefings and risk briefings and bringing CEOs in and educating from the top down really is helpful for all of us. And I met with Dave Pekoski as well at TSA and some of the work we're doing transportation. I'm wearing my Delta shirt here because I chair safety and security for the airline. But to watch some of that happen was great too. And we watched, not just CISA as well, but, different agencies work together. What I want to ask you is, where's this going? Because I know the 4 things you talked about, some of that resiliency has led to some increased regulation, some increased recommendations for regulation as well, and also potentially some performance areas. Can you talk a little bit about where it's going a little bit? And by the way, we believe this is very healthy. We believe it's like porridge, we got to get it just right. Not too hot, not too cold, or not too much, not too little. But talk a little bit about your vantage point there.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling out Dave Pekoski. He's been a great partner, as all the other agencies have been. So let me just, a little bit of framing. You've heard this before, Dave. I know you and I have talked about this, but cyberspace is really 3 components, right? It's technology, the tablets, the hardware, the software. It's people. People are in cyberspace. We develop cyberspace. And then it's software and it's process, right? It's who's accountable for what, who's responsible for what. We are working on addressing vulnerabilities in each one of those realms of cyberspace in order to be able to build that resilience and to make what we have defensible. And so with that framing in mind, this is what you can expect out of our national cyber strategy. And this shouldn't be new information, but you've seen us, and by us, I mean Chris Inglis and Harry Kraystuff published an article in Foreign Affairs where there's an argument, a good argument, that risk needs to be rebalanced, right? So that it goes from small to big, from small and medium businesses to individuals to those that can bear the risk of cybersecurity and buy it down, including the federal government in that. So from local municipalities to the federal government, from consumers to producers, right? So there's a lot of the work that we are embarking upon in this coming year is really to realize that reality, that risk is really being borne by the end user right now. We need to shift it. How do we do that? There are a couple of ways, right? We've been relying on market forces for decades now. And that's gotten us, to some point, we've done better. But we realize that we need something a little bit more aggressive than market forces to get us over that hump, to be able to shift that risk. One of those opportunities, as you mentioned, Dave, is regulatory work. And so there are a couple of approaches that we're taking. We've seen in CERCIA, the latest and greatest from Congress on the cyber incident reporting law, that they've recognized that there is a regulatory regime that's sort of discordant right now. They've created then by Congress the Cyber Incident Response Council. ONCD sits on that council, and it's really the regulatory departments and agencies and some independent agencies that are gathered together to identify opportunities for harmonizing what exists out there, with the end goal ultimately, Dave, of allowing us to be able to measure the impact of cyber incidents on the U.S. industry, U.S. economy, the American people. You can't manage what you don't measure. So the opportunity we have there is to measure impact of cybersecurity incidents so that we can address them in a collective way. You remember that you have to beat all to beat one of us, right? So that is the opportunity that we have there, but we recognize that industry isn't effective if they have to rely on reporting measures for each individual agency that are slightly different, right? So we're trying to figure out a way to harmonize that process so that there is just one way for industry to be able to report, and then maybe you have some supplemental information depending upon the equities of that regulatory body. So it's like college applications these days. You submit one college application that serves 10 schools, and then you might have to submit a little bit of information depending upon the specifics of that school. That's what we're trying to drive. And we're doing that in a number of venues. CERC is just one of them.
And by the way, I've always been an advocate for those who have listened. I always felt like we needed almost like Sarbanes-Oxley controls in the world of cyber, that we could measure significant deficiencies and material weaknesses, to use SDs and MWs in the accounting world, for cyber. And it's important for us because our critical infrastructure is at risk. And now with the physical ramifications of a lot of that, this is dangerous to our economy if we don't have the proper hygiene and controls in place. And adding regulation to that in a way that enables us to safely report and create it in a common way. One big fan of all of that. I think we need it, and I'm really there. I want to talk a little bit about talent with you. And we launched at White House together with a whole consortium. I'd be curious on your perspective on a lot of jobs available right now in cyber, even with the recession. We talked about a zero unemployment rate in cyber. In fact, it's negative. Talk a little bit about talent and what the White House is doing and ONCD in that area going forward for everybody to hear.
Oh, absolutely, Dave. You were a part of our White House Summit, our kickoff event in June of this year, a few weeks after I came to the White House. And I want to say right up front that America's superpower is our diversity. There are no countries in my mind that are quite like ours. We have a wealth of different creeds, different abilities, differences in thought, different experiences that we can bring to bear to address complex cybersecurity problems. So with that said, imagine us just harnessing the superpower that we have. We have a challenge that we are equipped to face. We have over 700,000 unfilled jobs with the word cyber and IT in them. We talked about that a bit this summer. We got commitments from 19 or so companies that came to the summit. I think yours or several that you're affiliated with, Dave, were some of those committers. But we also had the Departments of Education, Homeland Security, Commerce, and Labor in that space also making commitments so that we are in this together. As we talked, we realized that the circle is actually quite bigger than the 700,000. We have jobs that implicate cyber. So jobs like mine, policy folks, CEOs, accountants, assembly workers. What is their level of awareness? And then what's the pipeline? What's that K through 12, the grandmothers, the reskilled, the veterans? What is their level of cyber education, right? In order to feed the pipeline to those that implicate cyber and ultimately to those that have cyber IT in their jobs. So it's a job opportunity, economic opportunity, as well as an opportunity to resolve one of our national security concerns. So there are a couple of things that inform that. I mentioned before that we had Departments of Labor, Education, and Commerce involved. We've taken the approach of making sure that we have the right piece parts in the educational system and awareness built in that leads to good paying jobs, right? That leads to a well-informed labor force. You need all three, commerce, education, and labor, in order to make this work, to feed the pipeline. We were able then to facilitate a sprint that Department of Labor and Department of Commerce instituted in that June summit. That sprint resulted in over 7,000 registered apprentices that have been employed now. It's still going. The sprint, we capstoned it with the First Lady in Chicago, where we had a few other companies sign on for registered apprenticeships, but it's still going. It's a testament to what we can do when we put all three pieces together: education, awareness, and labor together. It is something that we are passionate about. We are working on our next strategy. Once the National Cybersecurity Strategy is published, we will work on our National Workforce Strategy that will hang off of that, because this really is economic opportunity. It's a national security imperative, and it really will spark innovation in the long run.
By the way, I love what you're doing, and I know Secretary Walsh is passionate about this, and you know, the apprenticeship program has been impressive. I mean, getting all that, I always felt like, and you've heard me talk about this, you said it best, like America's superpower is its talent and diversity, right? How do we harness that together, not just with this amazing technology world we create, but with the people side of it as well? And, you know, I think the administration's doing a nice job with all of that, and happy to support. Last question for you, because I know we've done it for a while, and thank you for joining. What do you see in 2023? Like what kinds of things are coming? I know the national security strategy will be rolled out. You know, any little inklings of that could you share? And what does 2023 look like, if you would?
Sure. So the National Cybersecurity Strategy, as you pointed out, is coming. I can't give you an actual date, but it is coming. And I've given you some tips, some hints, but you'll see some trends in that strategy. The first I mentioned is shifting risk, right? Shifting the burden of risk from small to big, from consumer to producer. But also it's building resilience. Right? What are the strategic investments that we need to make in the future to build current resilience, making what we have defensible, and then addressing that residual risk, right? How do we build resilience in the technology, people, and doctrine? You'll see a lot of work towards that end. So like I mentioned, we are going to continue working on implementing 14028, getting our own house in order. You will see our cyber workforce strategy come to fruition, where we address, in my mind, one of the key elements of cybersecurity. We'll continue to work on regulatory harmonization in the way that I described. That really gets that doctrinal piece. And then in that technology piece, we will continue to work on supply chain security. We have a mandate to take a look at and study quantum encryption. So we're working all three elements of cyberspace and trying to figure out what are the strategic investments we need to make to close the vulnerabilities in all three, so that we can succeed in the ability to ensure that everybody is able to thrive and prosper in the internet.
Kemba Walden, thank you so much. Happy New Year to you, my friend, and congratulations on your job. We really appreciate you. Thank you for your service. I know how hard it is, especially with the whole new office being set up, first time, a lot of things going on. We appreciate you. And I just wanted to say thank you, from me to you, and keep up the great work. And, the private community is behind a lot of what we're doing. So whatever we can do to help serve you, let us know. And Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you too, Dave. I'd be remiss to tell you that I am lucky in that we have an office that is full of brilliant, capable, extraordinary people and civil servants like Director Inglis. And so I appreciate the staff. I appreciate the partnership that we've had, Dave, and with other members of industry. I think we've got a great 2023 to look forward to.
Happy New Year to you. I'll see you around in person, I'm sure, soon. Take care and best of luck. Okay, everybody. Well, I just want to say thank you and maybe just summarize for one more minute before we say goodbye. Just 4 minutes to go. Thank you. This has been really, really helpful. And I started off by showing you a slide of 2022. And I thought I'd just recap for a minute because there's a lot that we learned today. And you'll see me post on this as well here in the next few hours. But it's been really interesting to watch what I call these cyber super cycles and the continuation and the threat environment. You heard from a lot of people. Obviously some of the technology areas were confirmed. I think we heard OT about 14 times as well. Industrial security being a big area of concern, but also cloud, big ones coming as well in that space. One area we didn't talk about a lot in this particular session that I think is a big 2023, and that's the area of trust and safety of our information. You heard about weaponization of data and information like that, but it's really an area of concern for me is how do we protect our data, how to protect our information, the integrity of that information as well. So areas for us to keep an eye on. It was great to hear from the Wall Street crew and also the venture capital crew on some new cool areas that are growing, cloud, crowd, and AI, as I like to say. So with all that, I'd like to say thank you, particularly to Sarah Corinda as well, and helping me put all this together. Amy DeSalvatore, thank you. Everyone, all the panelists, appreciate you. I'm off to CES and the Consumer Electronics Show, and we'll be doing a live session with Jen Easterly there as well. And we're going to be talking a lot of the next generation consumer security and safety areas as well while we're there. So I look forward to talking to everybody. Happy New Year, everyone, from NightDragon to all of you. Have a wonderful day. Take care.